WNST, River and Through the Woods, to everyone out there celebrating. And, go light on the eggnog and the pumpkin cheesecake there. It is baseball offseason, and, I remember when some of these Thanksgiving weekends begat Curt Schilling to the Red Sox long-term and lots of negotiations, but baseball's a little back burner right now as we get the football thing going and the Ravens taking on the Texans, but it's never back burner for me or for this guy. He is a baseball historian and author. He's got a new book coming out on modern baseball, an extension of the book 9 Innings from a couple of decades ago. He's our longtime friend and baseball defender and talker. We welcome Rob Neyer back onto the program. You can follow him at Rob Neyer out on Twitter. He also wrote a little bit for The Athletic and will be writing for the National Pastime Museum soon. Happy off-season to you, Rob. I don't know. I ran into Cal Ripken and Dan Duquette on Monday morning before the sun came up, so it always feels like baseball season in Baltimore. But this is a time of the year where championships really are won and where real directions of franchises start to move, right?
Well, I would say that in a fictional world, yes, that's true. And by that I mean, as fans, and I think writers too fall prey to this, we tend to look at what happens in the off season and think that teams have sort of magically transformed themselves. But it does happen, but it's very difficult to do. But, I mean, all you have to do is think about the math that's involved, right? You've got, these days, you're going to use between 40 and 50 players in a season. You think, on opening day, obviously 25 players. How many of those roster spots can you reasonably expect to change significantly in the off season? I mean, there just aren't enough free agents out there. Most teams aren't going to make a lot of trades. In the old days, and occasionally in the new days, you will find a team or general manager who's willing to be incredibly aggressive in the off season and remake a roster. But you know what? It's easier to remake your roster into a bad roster because you're rebuilding than to make your roster into a great roster or to sign enough free agents to become a great roster. It's hard to do. We still have tons of turnover from season to season when it comes to the best and the worst teams, no question. But that's due to a lot of things, not just what happens in the off season.
Rob, I would say when you have the kind of pitching we had here in Baltimore, it's not hard to upgrade now, is it?
Well, I don't know. You might have said the same thing a year ago.
Yeah, and, it doesn't get better, and I don't know how it gets better unless you throw money at it or unless you really do have a pipeline for prospects to be coming through, and the Orioles have really no desire to throw money at it and no prospects coming through. And before we even get to the end of any sort of reasonable period of time, they're already talking about, well, how do we bring Chris Tillman and Wade Miley back next year, which means that you're just sort of signing up to suck again next year. I don't know how you get your pitching better. I don't know if it's a rhetorical question or not. Certainly spending a lot of money on it is the only way to affect it quickly, at least in the perceptive world, right?
Well, that's absolutely true. And it's also true that there aren't that many top starting pitchers out there right now. And there's a lot of competition for the ones that are there, right? It's really tough. I know the Orioles have been linked to Lance Lynn and Alex Cobb, both of whom would be fine additions, relatively speaking. And, I mean, they're basically the third and fourth best guys on the market after Yu Darvish and Jake Arrieta. So, not to rub any salt in the wound, but
they're still going to be $100 million deals, probably.
Absolutely, no question. But
they didn't have the belly for Jimenez at $48 million, right?
As we said, you even if you sign Lynn or Cobb, you're still not. You're changing 1/5 of your rotation basically, and of course the Orioles are going to change more than that because so many of their 2017 starting pitchers are on the market. So it's tough. I think that obviously there are three ways you can do it. You can sign free agents, which is hard. You can call up prospects, which is easy to do, but hard to get great performance out of them, even good performance. We know how nobody knows better than the Orioles how spotty young pitchers can be, and you can trade for starting pitchers. Maybe not stars. That's really hard, but you can trade for some pitchers who can help you. Look at how the Cubs have helped themselves the last 3 or 4 years, trading for starting pitchers, and other teams have done that as well.
Well, there's also picking up someone else's problem contractually and flipping those out. We've heard all of this. Well, Trumbo's going to bring a pitcher. You know, who's going to take Trumbo and his salary and give us something of use? They're going to give us something expensive that they don't want anymore, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, it's tough to do that way. I think you're better off. Trading Zach Britton. If you have two problems. If you have a rotation issue and a bullpen issue, and you can pick which one are you going to pick? I'm going to pick the bullpen issue because I can fix that easier than I can fix the rotation issue. So if there's something to be had for Zach Britton in terms of talented, young starting pitching, I have to make that deal.
Well, Rob, this is an interesting offseason all the way around. I mean, I said I ran into Dan Duquette, and I said to him, and not tongue-in-cheek, you've only got 10 months left. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they'll let you out of here. I know the contract dries up at that point, and there's no secret that he will not be hanging around here and didn't want to hang around here the last 3 years, quite frankly. Showalter's more interesting, and they're tied to the end of next year, as is Adam Jones, as is Zach Britton, as is Brad Brock, and as is, most importantly, Manny Machado, right? And the Machado thing, it feels like that thing's already sailed, and it really does feel like the word from this organization is going to be, we're going to give it one last shot. We're going to bring in a couple of retread pitchers. We're going to throw a little bit of this at it and a little bit of that at it, and we're going to wait on Bundy and Gausman, and they're going to be the answer next year, and we're going to play with what we have. But the Davis contract's heavy. The Trumbo contract's heavy. And more than that, and I think the most important thing, and I haven't even mentioned it among a dozen things, long term, if you want to do something this offseason, sign Jonathan Scope, right? Because, this is the time that has to happen, or he goes into that Machado, wheelhouse of he's not going to be here anymore. I'm wondering who is going to be here, Rob, and I think every Oriole fan, thinking Oriole fan, I don't know how many of those there are left, should be concerned about that in combination with the renaissance of the Yankees and the Red Sox that appears very much in the early stages. I mean, it's still March, early April for that bloom. It's going to be an ugly 5-year period around here, not just for the Orioles, but also for the Blue Jays and the Rays.
I don't really disagree with you, given what the Yankees and Red Sox are doing. I do think there is always going to be some room in there for another team. I mean, you look at the NL West just this year. Nobody had the Diamondbacks or the Rockies, let alone both of them, in the postseason. Things can turn around faster than you expect. It often takes a change at the top, a new general manager. I think frankly, I think when it comes to team building, a new general manager is more important than a new manager. Paul Molitor got a lot of the credit for the Twins going to the playoffs, another huge surprise, but not that many people talked about the fact they had a new general manager. And not that he made a lot of big moves, but I think that when you have a recent history of losing seasons, I think somebody's got to set a different tone in the organization, in addition to just making a few good moves. I think the world of Dan Duquette, but I also wonder if maybe it is time for a new direction, and I don't think it has to take 5 years. You can find a lot of teams that were crummy for 2 or 3 years and then turned it around all of a sudden.
He is Rob Neyer. You can follow him out at Rob Neyer on Twitter for all things baseball and life. He's in the midst of a baseball project and a book on modern baseball. Rob, you've been secretive about this, but you got a contract now, and I guess this thing will be out in a year and a half. Run me through your version of modern baseball and an updated version of 9 innings.
Well, really, the 9 innings was a book that came out in '85. It was focused on a game from 1982. Dan Okrent, who wrote the book, it took him 3 years. I have about 5 months to write my version. So it's going to be a somewhat different sort of book. But basically the idea is to look at modern baseball, look at the game as it's played on the field today and off the field, through the prism of a single game. And my editor and I picked an Astros-A's game, which worked out pretty well given the Astros won. We picked the game back in September, so that was just dumb luck. A little bit of luck anyway. There are so many facets, as you know, that we can look at, but the book's called Powerball, at least at this point, and I'm really focusing on the the transformation we've seen in the last just 2 or 3 years with the strikeout rates and the home run rates going ever upward with really at this point no end in sight.
Well, and then there's, the shifts that have gone on. I mean, I don't think you have to be a big baseball fan to have watched Chris Davis rake here for a couple of years, get his $140 million contract, and now they just shift on him, and they're shifting on everybody.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was afraid that I've already written way more about that than I should have. So I'm glad that at least you're interested.
Well, I mean, I think it's the game now. It's for the people that have made the transition, who manage like Buck Showalter on the other end of the analytics, and are now here where general managers spit out everything, every tendency, every cut up. It is a much more studious game, the game of baseball, from a coaching standpoint than it ever was. It was much more feel and gut instinct and a little bit of your human sort of card catalog. Now it is all played out statistically and analytically, a much more, I guess, scientific than our old Stratomatic cards even, Rob.
Well, that's absolutely true. And I think what's the last book that really was successful and got deep into what baseball has become, of course, was Moneyball. That was 12 years. No, let me think. That was 15 years ago almost that book came out. So 15 years is a long time, especially when we're talking about technology. And at that point, it was just the A's and a few other teams that were dabbling. The A's were way ahead of almost everybody else when it came to analytics. Now, frankly, I think they're somewhat behind most teams. They have a relatively tiny staff working on that sort of stuff. Go look at the staff that the Dodgers have, for example. They have dozens of people doing this stuff. The Astros have many, many analysts and a massively powerful computer, if you believe the rumors. So, that's another part of the power in Powerball, is just the computing power and the brain power and the money that teams are putting into this stuff. And you can win without it. It's been done, but I think it's tougher.
Rob Neyer joining us here, baseball historian and author, working on all sorts of stuff. You can find him up on Twitter. Pretty good baseball season, right, Rob? I mean, I've talked to a lot of folks in retrospect about, and I said, boy, not bad if you like two National League teams in the World Series, sort of tongue-in-cheek, but the Astros, the Dodgers, all the way around, the Yankees renaissance, the firing of these managers with the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Nationals at the end of the year, with some old sort of Steinbrennerian spirit going on there, and displacement. There's a lot of movement in baseball, but nothing quite like the Houston Astros having a parade. It's always nice to have fresh blood.
It is, and I think that was a really fun story, as everyone remembers now. SI put the Astros on their cover in, I believe it was 2014, with the headline "Your 2017 World Champions," which was obviously sort of facetious, but it was getting at the heart of something that was real, and that it actually happened. I think the biggest downside of the season was that there were very few races that went down to in the last weekend. Really none of any substance. The Red Sox and Yankees wound up being close for first place, but we knew both of those teams were going to be in the playoffs one way or the other, in August, basically. But it was great to see the Astros win finally after 56 years, almost 55 years,
and a lot of jersey changes. They had more costume changes than Madonna, right. I think. Right.
Great to see the Twins in the playoffs, the Rockies and the Diamondbacks. That was a lot of fun. The Brewers had a shot, just missed a playoff spot by one game, a wild card spot. So it wasn't a great season in terms of pennant races, but you're right. It was great seeing some different teams in there.
For you, Rob, and the Orioles in the offseason and picking things up, any prescription in your mind? I mean, other than trading Britton, which, I'll hear that, and certainly the difference between trading in the offseason versus waiting to the trading deadline versus, well, let's just play it out. Machado will still have value on July 31st. I don't know how all that plays out, but I do know the guy making the decisions and the manager, this is all they've got left. So they're sort of all in. They want to win next year. They're not signed after next year. I really do wonder, this is the time where you do shape the next 3 to 5 years of your organization in a lot of ways. That's the part that concerns me the most here with the Orioles is who is making decisions, who's going to be here if we buy green bananas.
It's a great question. I mean, I think you want to have a solid game plan, a blueprint for success, and I don't know what that blueprint looks like for 2018. I think what you want to be doing is looking a bit longer term because where do you fit into that playoff picture next season? It's just hard to see. Not impossible. We've seen stranger things. The Twins last season were at a bigger long shot to make the playoffs than the Orioles would be in 2018, given what we know now. So anything can happen, but is it likely to happen? And I don't know. I just think that given what's going on in the rest of the division especially, I think it might make sense to start thinking about the 2020, 2021. It seems like a long ways away, but you know what? That's what people said about the Cubs during their 3 or 4 horrible seasons, and now look where they are. That's what people said about the Astros during theirs. So if you want to get to that place where you've got a good shot at winning 90 to 100 games for a few years in a row, I think you got to take a few hits in there, and the Orioles haven't really been willing to do that yet.
He is Rob Neyer. He is the writer of writings. You can follow him at Rob Neyer. That's Neyer out on Twitter, as well as at robneyer.com. Works occasionally at The Athletic, doing a little piece for the National Pastime Museum next week as well. All that stuff will be on his Twitter. I'm going to leave you last thing here. I'm asking people in the offseason this question because we are still 100 days away from pitchers and catchers reporting, and there'll be plenty of off-season conjecture about Manny Machado and everybody else this off-season. What do you love about baseball after a good World Series, Rob? What keeps you hanging in halfway through this journey around the planet?
For me, at this point in my life, I think it's become the ritual or rituals of baseball. I don't follow a particular team anymore. The Mariners a little bit because they're the local team, so they're on the radio. But I just almost every day or evening during the season, I fire up my At Bat app on my phone, and I just find the best game going at that moment, and I listen for as long as I can. When you have a toddler, you're running around doing things and various other whatever hobbies we have at my age, but that baseball is always there when I want it for those 6-7 months, and that's what I appreciate the most at this point.
Nice. Well put. We'll be looking for the book and the modern baseball stuff and your little treatment of Astros and athletics. I'll be checking in here as some of the names come off the board, as they say, this offseason. Rob, have a great Thanksgiving. Don't eat too much pumpkin pie and eggnog, all right?
I'll do my best. Thanks for having me.
Send the leftovers my way. He is Rob Neyer, out on Twitter as well as at robneyer.com. Longtime baseball historian, writer, author, lecturer, and a fun guy to talk baseball with, which is what we're looking for here in the offseason. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from wherever you happen to be. It's all brought to you by BuyAToyota.com. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m. That is all brought to you by our friends at Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. Even though you load up on the eggnog and the pumpkin cheesecake, they'll still let you work it off for $10 a month as we get toward the end of the year. There is a Planet Fitness right around the corner from you, and you can get a little inspiration at Planet of Triumphs as well. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. If there's any breaking news through the holidays here, and if the Orioles actually sign somebody, or don't, you'll get it first on the WNST text service for breaking news. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. I'm Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, wishing you and all of your friends and family a great happy Thanksgiving holiday, Black Friday, all the shopping and craziness, and we'll see you Monday night at the Ravens-Texans games. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.